Hello, Internet. I'm Matt.
And I'm Monster Punter.
And this is the Parallax Scrolling Podcast, where we give you our perspective on video games and the news that affects them. And not a whole lot of news this week. We had some interesting stories, but it's going to be a fun time to talk about just games today, I think.
Well, I got a fair amount here.
I mean, a fair amount, but I don't know how much of this is going to get in depth. But I think we also have time to talk about video games and fun ones. Haven't really played anything outside of Starfield and Tears of the Kingdom. Although I do have to throw this up. I don't know what's going on, Microsoft, but when I needed to update Starfield, you wouldn't let me download the update, so I had to uninstall the entire game and reinstall it. And that was one night's progress gone. You took from me. Fix my updates.
They did fix your update. They replaced it.
Yeah, after I had to reinstall the whole dang thing. So, yeah, but otherwise, still kind of playing that game, still having some fun. More about just trying to find side stories, and I'm trying very hard to not get overwhelmed with the side questing in that game, much like Witcher 3. Witcher 3, you can get lost in the side quests.
Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Otherwise, still having fun with those games. There is one other game that we both started playing that we didn't talk about last week that we probably should talk about.
Go ahead.
And it is a game called Monster Hunter Now.
Monster Hunter Now, yes.
And Monster Hunter Now is for mobile. And if you play Pokemon Go, it's by the same people. And you walk around, and this time instead of capturing Pokemon, you fight monsters. And it's really fun.
Yeah, it's not bad, given what it is.
I mean, it still has updates to go and fine-tune the engine and things like that. But otherwise, I'm actually having fun with it.
Yeah, by no means is it perfect, but if you want to get out, walk around, fight some monsters, I mean, it gives you an excuse to do something while you're out walking around and just get out and walk around in general.
Yeah, it's another great way to get some exercise. And for those who have played Pokemon Go, the combat is very different. Instead of you just spinning the ball and flicking your finger and hoping you catch the monster, this time around you have to tap the screen for you to swing your weapon. You have to slide your finger across to make dodges. Dodging, hold attacks, charge attacks, all those things matter. It's more dynamic in combat, I feel. So if you're a fan of Monster Hunter and you got a phone, because, I mean, if you got a phone, you should have been playing Diablo Immortal. That's an old joke. But if you got a phone, pick up Monster Hunter Now if you like Monster Hunter. You'll have fun.
Yeah, you still get to upgrade your armors and do all that kind of stuff.
Yep, you change your weapons out. And Hunter rank matters. Because the more you change your Hunter rank, the more things you unlock. In fact, I just unlocked rank 30 yesterday.
Okay.
And I finally got more paintballs.
Oh, fun.
And paintballs are a fun mechanic because paintballs, you paint a monster and then the fight's over because you can now fight that monster whenever you feel like within the next 2 days, as opposed to trying to fight it right then and there. So that's very nice. I'm enjoying it. So what about you? Did you get to play anything else?
No, just the regular stuff. This last week at work was very involved and intense. I probably worked... No joke, I probably worked 75, 80 hours, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to myself.
Understandable.
So I don't really have a whole lot to say on the front of what I'm playing, other than just continuing the things that I have already.
Right. But still, these games are fun, and if you guys want to share what you guys think about what games you're playing, that's extra stuff we want to hear about from you guys. Like I said, we're trying to build this community and talk to each other, and we want to get your feedback. And speaking of getting feedback, I asked you guys last week about open world games. Not so much your love-hate, but do you want them bigger, smaller? What do you want? And we actually do have a response from Tom. And Tom says, open world games should have smaller maps with more meaningful and varied things to do, like Yakuza. They should also have very fun traversal, like swinging around in Spider-Man, the bike in Days Gone, or flying in Gravity Rush. Those three have the best traversal I have seen in any open world game. I agree. Swinging around as Spider-Man is so rewarding because it's not just I'm moving from point A to point B. You can do flips and tricks and all these crazy things. And then while you're running around, like, it's fun to just, like, go. If you want to be sky high in the city, just shoot it from skyscraper top to skyscraper top. That's one way to go. But if you actually run along the ground, there's so many civilians and they interact with you like, hey, Spidey, what's up? You know, or you'll find like, oh, there's a bank robbery or there's something to do. And it feels alive. And I like that. What about you?
I think they should be smaller. I think the only games that can get away with like a gigantic world, in my opinion, are probably MMOs because of the nature of what they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, I kind of said this last week. I think anybody who says that what Starfield's doing with their traversal system is bad, I think I just can't agree with it. I get that people want it to be No Man's Sky where you can just fly to a planet. But to be honest with you, it's the in-between traveling that just is so boring and time-consuming. And I don't, at the risk of sounding or repeating myself again, it's just a time sink that doesn't reward you with anything meaningful. So it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this again. Starlink, I think, has the best space to sky or sky to space traversal I've ever seen. Mainly because it just makes you feel like you're actually rocketing through the atmosphere and the turbulence, and you're just going out. There's an emotion behind it, you know. Whereas I can't see it in any other game like that. But thank you very much, Tom, for your input. And anybody else got inputs? Let them know. Let us know in the comments down below. Do you have other question you'd like to ask this week?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I just can't think of anything to ask you guys this week for feedback. So now's a great time. If you have a question you want us to answer, tell us in the comments down below. And while you're at it, like and subscribe and bell and...
Yeah, do all those things, please.
Yes, and make us a GoFundMe.
No, don't do that.
It's always a joke. It's always a joke. I'm not serious. It's always a joke. Anyhow, that's pretty much the big thing on that. Before we get into news, though, there is something I wanted to touch on. We had talked, I think about a month ago now. We went over somebody's top 15 or 25 retro games of all time.
Yeah.
And we agreed with some of them, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, could you give me like 3 or 5 even of retro games you would put on a retro game list of all time without actually making an official list yet?
So, folks, he is blindsiding me with this question.
I am.
This was not planned.
It's not.
And he's putting me on the spot, so...
I am.
I hate you. The top 5 retro games of all time is
like what games do you feel like had the most impact on retro gaming?
That's a different question from like, you know, I think the games that had the biggest impact on gaming through the years, retro is what we're talking about, or the biggest ones that had an influence on me. Those are two completely different questions.
I don't know. I disagree. Would it help you if I gave you some of mine and then you have?
Well, for instance, the things that had the biggest effect on gaming. Let's talk about loot boxes and stuff. I hate them, but it did affect the industry.
This is Grumpy Monster Punter chiming in. Just give me video games. What? Okay,
jeez.
Fine. I will give you. What are your 5 video games?
All right, 5. Jeez. Okay.
All right. I'll give you mine, and then you can.
All right. Fine. Go ahead.
Because you need time, and I know you're padding, so I'm going to give you time here. All right.
No, I'm not padding.
Probably the easiest one for me.
Totally padding.
Probably the easiest one for me to put on the list. Mega Man 2.
Mega Man 2.
Mega Man 2 is probably one of the best retro games of all time.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that is because
there's such an iconic feel to it. Even when you're playing it as a kid, there was just something special about that game. Especially if you were to compare it to any other Mega Man. Because Mega Man, in some form, needs to be on a retro gaming list. because Mega Man as an IP has had such a massive, profound effect on the industry. And what's the best one in any way you look at it? 2. The bosses were cool. The soundtrack was amazing. The weapons themselves were just brilliant.
The disappearing blocks were awesome. Wait.
Okay, but that's not like every Mega Man.
I hate disappearing blocks.
And they hate you too. That's why they disappear. But I would say Mega Man 2 for sure.
Okay, not to break in on your list too much here.
No, go ahead.
Just as an aside, just tangents being what they are. I used the Game Genie on that quite a bit when I was growing up, and you could break it to where you couldn't beat it. Like you get to where you had to fight all the masters again.
Yeah.
And if you had the invincibility code in, and you ran out of what you needed to kill any of the masters, you were stuck.
Can I one up you there? I was playing a ROM of Mega Man 2, and for fun, I gave myself infinite energy. Not health, but infinite weapon energy. I beat Flashman, and I went into Flashman stage thinking, I'll just activate the flash power so I don't ever have to worry about the stupid beams of death in Quickman stage, and then I'll have the energy to destroy him. It'll be fun. That was a bad idea. Because once you activate Flashman's power, A, you can't turn it off. It goes till the bar's empty. And then B, you can't pause to go into the menu to change your weapon. So I was stuck. I couldn't even go into the boss room with Quickman. I couldn't attack anything. Like the bad guys that were on screen were just static. It's sitting there. And I couldn't touch them. It sucked. So, yeah, it's possible to break that game. But it's possible to break a lot of old school games.
Yeah, Game Genie being the Game Genie. All right, what next?
I don't believe this one was on the list. Because he said Super Mario World. I'm saying Super Mario Brothers 3.
Okay.
Super Mario Bros. 3 is just good.
Well, yes.
Yeah. So I'm just...
It was a really, really packed game when it came out.
Absolutely. If you look at it compared to any other, obviously Super Mario Brothers, but I don't think most games on the Nintendo were that complicated in terms of level design and the amount of levels.
Yeah, for its time, it had a ton of levels.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was so good they made a movie out of it. They didn't make a movie out of it. They made a movie with it.
The Super Mario Super Show.
No, The Wiz.
I know. The Wizard.
The Wizard, that's it. I thought it was The Wiz. I can't.
No, it's The Wizard.
It's been a while. All I remember is the bully.
California.
I was gonna say all I remember is the bully going. Well, he had the power glove. It's so red.
So 80s.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
80s. Yeah, it wasn't. So Super Mario Brothers 3. What else you got?
Oh, I'm starting to draw a blank. I don't know why.
Oh, see now you.
No, I actually have a list at home. I forgot to bring it.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I don't think Chrono Trigger was on his list, so I would definitely put Chrono Trigger.
Okay.
As one of the greatest retro games of all time because that game is just fantastic.
One of the greatest retro games of all time.
Probably one of the greatest games of all time.
Okay.
Which is great because people compare Sea of Stars to Chrono Trigger, so that makes Sea of Stars also one of the greatest games of all time. I just had to throw that in there.
Your love for that game is, plainly obvious.
Okay, so I've given you 3. Give me 3 back, and we'll just move on from there.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
All right, fine. We'll go with Sonic the Hedgehog, because Sonic the Hedgehog was an iconic and awesome game.
Which one?
The very first one.
You want the very first one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sonic 2 was, when you have a day named after you, Sonic Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sonic 2 was bigger, but as far as being meaningful and changing the landscape of how everything was, I think Sonic the Hedgehog, I played that game so much, mostly because all we had was Pac-Mania and Sonic the Hedgehog when I got my Genesis. That was it. Yeah. That's all we had for a year. So we played a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog.
All my brother had when he got his Genesis was Shining in the Darkness.
Oh, man.
Oh, dude, it was awesome. No, he loved it. Which, rightfully so. But
oh, jeez.
Okay, so Sonic the Hedgehog.
The top 3 retro games that I can think of.
I don't know if top 3, but within your top 25 list.
Okay, fine. Lunar Silver Star Story.
I will absolutely
the
agree
Sega
with
CD.
You're gonna go with that one?
Yes.
I would go with Complete, but that's just me. That's personal opinion.
That's the first one I played, obviously. So it was an epic RPG that came out on CD. It was huge and had cinemas and things like that for its time. It was amazing. I absolutely loved that game. I guess, there's so many good games.
There are. You just remind me of another one I put on my list.
Oh,
Alundra.
Alundra
for the PS1.
I remember you liking that game.
That game's the best. And they destroyed it by making a sequel that had nothing to do with the first game. It literally has zero to do with the first game, but they called it Alundra 2. And it was dumb.
Man.
Yeah.
I guess if I had to pick another one, probably... I played this game just an absolute ton on way back. It was the first game we had, and I remember my little brother was only 4 years old when we got it, and we played this game to hell and back at Junior Pac-Man on the Atari 2600.
Junior Pac-Man?
Yeah. I love Junior Pac-Man, and I need to get an emulator for it because I loved it, and I think it was in the arcade too. And for an Atari game, I mean, it's an Atari game. The graphics are what they are, but it had scrolling levels in an Atari game, which
that's actually pretty impressive.
It was crazy for the time, and the levels were huge.
That's completely aside. That's another top list we should do at some point. Is top arcade games.
Yeah, we could do that.
Before they ever got put on systems. What were the top arcade games? But I'm sorry, I digress.
Junior Pac-Man, absolutely loved it back then.
Yeah.
Worth every penny. I suggest everybody play it.
Okay, so Sonic, Lunar, Silver Star Story, and Junior Pac-Man.
Yeah, the surprise Junior Pac-Man.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad list. Not a bad list at all. What are yours? Just think about that. What were some of your best retro games of all time? Let us know. Okay, news time.
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm going to turn that into our theme song for news now. Anytime I mention going forward, all right, going to talk about news. Just going to be you. Dun, dun, dun.
I'm sorry, everybody. I'm really sorry.
I'm going to steal a sound clip from this episode and put it in every single one going forward.
I apologize for I'm going to single-handedly stop everybody from listening to us that does.
That's okay. We don't do it for them anyways, do we?
Well,
we like that you're here, but we do it for us.
Speaking of things stopping, Gran Turismo Sport online services will end January 2024. I only bring this up just to, again, say that I don't understand why a game has to have online services shut down when peer-to-peer is a thing. Granted, Gran Turismo Sport has been out for a while, and it came out, before this latest generation even started. But for goodness sakes, I mean,
I think it's because people were so terrified of peer-to-peer in the beginning, because you couldn't gauge what another person's internet was like.
Sure, I mean,
and so you couldn't tell, did this person have fiber internet, or does this person running on 56K modem?
Is it a perfect solution? No, of course. But right, I'm just saying.
And that's what I'm saying. I think in the beginning, their fears were founded, but now most people have decent, quote unquote, decent internet, as long as the ISPs are providing that service. But I think peer to peer would be effective. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't understand why a game has to shut down its online services when peer-to-peer is something that can happen at all anymore. And
it may also be a money thing. They don't think they can get any more money out of the product.
Sure, but it doesn't take... why not just turn on peer-to-peer? You don't even need any servers or anything at that point on the part of the Gran Turismo community. It just is something you go and do. It doesn't... I don't get it.
But how did the billionaires make all their billions?
I mean, if you're not going to support the game anymore with any more updates or anything, why does it matter that you turn on peer-to-peer?
Because the billionaires want your money.
I bring it up because of game preservation, and I can't remember the name of the project. Modern Vintage Gamer brought it up, but there are people reviving Xbox Live, and there's something like 18 games for the original Xbox playable again.
One of my favorite games that was very short-lived was actually released by Square Enix, and it was a PvP game called Nosgoth. And it was, you had team vampires, and it was like several different types of vampires people could be, like classes. And then you had team human, which was all these different players with different classes. And you just fought each other. And it's one of the few PvP games I've ever played that I've just loved. I had so much fun playing that game. The game didn't do as well as they wanted, so they shut the servers down.
Yeah.
Well, cut to about maybe a couple of years ago. There's people on Steam who have said, hey, join our Discord and we will get you into our Nosgoth servers. They've resurrected the servers. So you can play the game again. It's fantastic because it's literally the only way you can play it. That game can only be played online.
I gotcha. Okay.
So look that up if you can.
Well, also talking about all those retro games and stuff that we were doing.
Yeah.
The Raspberry Pi 5 is coming out. And
now that seems a little redundant because it's pi as in PI. So that's 3.14 repeating. So how can you have 3.14 repeating for the 5th time?
Well,
that's not math.
It works. I don't know. The fact of the matter is these are great little devices to play retro games with.
Yeah.
They're pretty cheap. This is only $60. And you get a machine that is capable of all the emulation you would want, basically through PlayStation 2, I would assume at least. And
sounds like from the strength of it.
Yeah, granted, this is software emulation, so it's not as good as hardware emulation. But if you're looking for a cheap way to have a little box that sits under your TV that you can play retro games with and have a ton of them, this is something you can do. And I think it would work great.
And how much is this one going for?
$60. You can get them as cheap as $60.
$60.
And this one is 3 times more powerful than the prior version because they couldn't get chips during the pandemic, so there wasn't another version that came out for a while. So now that there's finally a new one, it's a substantial increase in performance. So, yeah, check that out. Raspberry Pi 5, if you want to make an emulation box, man, you could do worse.
And we should note, as protection for ourselves and for you, dear viewer, dear listener, if you're going to play old school retro games, probably a good idea you actually find a way to get a hold of a copy to protect your rear should somebody get offended and come after you. As long as you have a physical copy, and that's why physical copies are awesome, if you have a physical copy, you can't be touched for doing this.
But then again, there's tons of old games where you can't get they're too expensive or anything like that anymore, or you can't even find, period.
Right, but we're just saying, if for those games you can, it'll help you to get a copy. That way you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great, though. Definitely check it out.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of protecting yourself, you know who didn't protect themselves? NVIDIA.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, story came out recently. NVIDIA's French offices were reportedly raided in an antitrust inquiry from the French Competition Authority. Basically, there was no official disclosing of who was the company, but several sources familiar with what happened told the Wall Street Journal, and that's where I got the information from, that NVIDIA was the company that was raided. And the reason they were raided is because suspicion that the company was partaking in anti-competitive practices. So, I'm gonna read this. It's a special quote here. Following authorization from a liberty and custody judge, the investigation services of the Autorité de la Concurrence, I can't speak French, I'm not going to try, carried out a dawn raid at the premises of a company suspected of having implemented anti-competitive practices in the graphics card sector. Yeah, that sounds like NVIDIA. What do you think?
Well, considering they own roughly 80% of the graphics card market for PCs, and they're making money hand over fist with their AI accelerated graphics cards, those things sell for anywhere from like $750 to $80,000 a card, and they take $3,000 to make. So NVIDIA's making a killing. I mean, we talked about this before. Yeah. Their valuation is up over $1 billion because of it.
Yeah, they're like the big dog, if not the biggest dog in the graphics card industry. And so, is this a shock? No, but it's nice to hear.
Keep in mind that this is also the same company that got dinged by, I believe, the United States for basically lying to shareholders about where their revenue was coming from. They tried to posit that their revenue during the pandemic was driven by gaming sales, but those gaming graphics cards weren't driven by people wanting to actually play games. It was driven by people who wanted to Bitcoin mine. Not technically Bitcoin, it's Ethereum, but Ethereum miners. They were picked up by Ethereum miners and pushed the graphics cards. They're a $300 graphics card selling for $800 to $900.
Yeah.
No, I mean so they lied to their shareholders. They did get dinged for that. So this isn't something that comes as a surprise, really.
Yeah, well, I should say it's not a shock that this happened to them. It's a surprise that something's happening, though. That's, so hopefully we'll hear more about this, and hopefully justice is served.
Yeah, also, small update, but another lawsuit has been filed by the FTC against Microsoft in that merger. So it's simply it's being delayed yet again. We'll see what comes of it. I don't really know a whole lot of details right now.
It's so annoying.
But you know what also is annoying?
Yeah.
Fortnite maker Epic Games laying off 16% of their staff.
On the same day, they re-released an emo called Share the Wealth. The irony is not lost.
Well, still, I mean, Fortnite, everything at the end of the day follows a bell curve.
Yep.
You have this ramp up, it becomes really popular, and nothing stays popular forever. Except for living, I guess. But
I don't even know. Even then, like you talked about living years. They're not happy with living, but
no, I said nothing has 100% agreement.
Okay,
there's a difference between something being popular and having 100% agreement. Either way, I think at some point Fortnite's not going to be the big money. I mean, the cash cow that it is right now. And granted, they have the Epic Store, and what they're saying is that they've spent a lot of money on the Epic Store and giving away a lot of games.
Yeah,
and a lot of people who have the Epic Store, they just have the free games, and they still buy all their games on Steam.
Yep.
So here's the thing. There was a big stink made at one time about people wanting to support the developers. Let's not forget that Steam takes a larger cut from developers than Epic Games does.
True.
So if you feel like supporting developers, maybe you should pick up some more games on the Epic Games Store.
Or if you can, order it from their own website and get like a physical copy or a digital code from them. Because then the money goes straight to them.
All right.
So it's not that hard.
It sucks that 16% of the workforce got cut.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Hopefully something good comes of it. But I mean, everybody's going to use Unreal Engine 5,
especially with all the stuff happening with Unity.
So I wouldn't worry about Epic and their pockets. Speaking of other things that have been kind of, I don't know if this one sucks so much, but getting canceled or getting laid off. In that same vein, Sega cancels Creative Assembly's Hyenas and some unannounced titles. This was
the game Hyenas.
Yes.
And yeah.
It was supposed to be a hero shooter.
Yeah.
I think this is a good move because that market is saturated.
And the market's not even saturated. That market is falling apart.
Yeah.
Because Overwatch 2 is, I still believe, the most hated game on Steam. The most negatively reviewed.
But I'm just saying, it's like these the genre is saturated, and with live service games, the chances of them not succeeding are so much higher than just any other game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they rely on you on them keeping your attention and keeping you playing. Mm-hmm. So one of the problems with modern gaming, in my opinion, is that these live service games have made it so you must play this game in order to get things, and the fear of missing out is used when you have battle passes and all these other things. It's absolutely atrocious. I hate it.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good move by Sega. They got some really good games coming down the pipe, especially from Atlas, in my opinion. And I hope that those are really good.
Yeah.
So speaking of something that I think is really good for gamers just in general as well, is AMD released Fidelity Super Resolution 3, also known as FSR 3, this week. And now it's officially released in 2 games, Immortals of Avium and Forspoken.
Now, could you go into what that is?
Yes, that was the plan.
Okay, well, you didn't tell me. I had no idea. I was waiting for more foveated rendering Kool-Aid Man stuff. I was just
foveated rendering is still cool, by the way.
Yeah.
It is really cool.
I know, but it was just the idea of not understanding what was going on. So, please, by all means, what the heck is FSR?
Fidelity Super Resolution is a way of upscaling games more intelligently. NVIDIA uses deep learning supersampling, or DLSS, and so this is a competitor to DLSS.
Right. While
DLSS is an AI-driven kind of upscaler, FSR has been done through software means, through just your regular shaders on your GPU. So that's the big difference right now, is that you have one that's a hardware solution, one that's a software solution. And it's hard to compete with a software solution versus a hardware solution. So traditionally, FSR has not been as good as DLSS, but it's still a very good technology. So with FSR 3, this is the frame generation version of their technology. I hate using frame generation because that's what GPUs do. They generate frames. But it's called frame interpolation. So you have 2 frames that are created on the GPU, and this is used to create a frame in between. So it's not technically part of the game rendering. It's a wholly created frame only on the GPU.
Okay.
And so it gives you the illusion of more fluid motion in the game when the game is not natively rendering it. So the example they give in Forspoken goes from 53 FPS to over 175 FPS, but your mileage varies, and it can be very, very wild in how much of a bonus you get out of it.
Yeah.
Since
I'm probably going to put this comparison photo up on our podcast for those who are watching it on YouTube. Personally, I can see the difference in it, but it doesn't strike me as world changing.
Well, you have to see it in motion for starters.
I guess, yeah.
There's a lot of flickering that these upscalers get rid of. So they take lower resolution images and upscale it to higher resolution images, so that way it doesn't take as much compute power to make a lower resolution image.
Okay.
And then it goes through this process to make it look more like it would be at 4K. And sometimes these things actually look better than the 4K images would have looked itself.
I will say that probably the biggest difference I could see is the grass in the lower right corner is very different compared to everything else. Everything else seems kind of similar, but that grass definitely has a strong definition change, and it looks good.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that with frame interpolation, it also introduces more input lag. That's the biggest problem with these frame generation or interpolation products like this, is because you're waiting for another frame to be generated before an in-between frame can be made. So AMD also released Anti-lag plus, which is supposed to help alleviate a lot of that. It's not a perfect solution, but it does solve a lot of it. Unfortunately, anti-lag plus is only delegated to their latest GPUs. If you have an older GPU, you get plain old anti-lag. You don't get anti-lag plus, and you don't get anti-lag plus if you're using an NVIDIA card. But typically, if you're going to use an NVIDIA card, you're going to use DLSS. Unless you want frame gen, you'll have to use FSR3 if you're using anything but a 4000 series card from NVIDIA. I'm getting way out in the weeds here. Just to know this, the coolest thing about FSR3 compared to DLSS3 is DLSS3 has to be specifically implemented for a game and it's AI based. FSR3 is being used for old games too, and it spans a large range of video cards. So even if you have an older video card, you can benefit from FSR3, and you can put it in a lot of games that are not available to DLSS3. So very cool technology. I hope it's good enough to actually make it worthwhile to use. And I think the most important thing about this is, since it's not AI based, it can be used on the consoles too.
Oh, nice.
So this could come to your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X and S. So I think it has a lot of promise. I think it's really cool.
Awesome. Do you think it's going to be hard for them to implement that?
It depends on how the base resolution and among other things is. It's recommended that if it's running at roughly 60 FPS, you can use it there to go to like 120. If you're using it at 30 FPS, it's a lot more sluggish to get it to 60. So I don't see that being used in a console to get, how do I say, boosting a third game fidelity at 30 FPS to 60 FPS.
Yeah.
But what I could see it being used for is to keep a better 60 FPS line on games that would normally dip into the 50s.
Okay. So but it's definitely not going to be a hard thing for them to implement. It can just happen in time.
It's supposed to be a lot easier to implement, and eventually it's supposed to be activated through the AMD control panel. It's just something you toggle in your driver. It's not based on the game itself. It's just if it's a DX11 game, you can just turn it on. Boom, you have FSR3.
Cool. That's good. Like I said, it's not something that's going to be hard. But you know what is hard?
What?
Apparently, Sonic Frontiers final DLC is really hard.
Good.
And so reading this article off of Kotaku is where I'm getting my sources. But pretty much everyone is in one of two camps regarding the new final update called Final Horizons. It is the extra story mode with Knuckles and Tails and Amy. You get to play with them and go through more story, which is great because that game is amazing. As I said before, probably best game of 2022, hands down.
So I'm assuming you're getting the DLC.
Oh, yeah, if I can. I got to remember to borrow my brother's copy of the game before I go back to it, though. So I'll get there. But anyways, people are going through this new mode, and it's got a whole bunch of new extra things. I don't want to spoil too much. I don't want to spoil it for myself. I don't want to spoil it for you. But people are going to social media, and there are complaining / praising these things, talking about how hard it is for them to adjust to how differently the companions move while trying to complete different challenges with them. Apparently there are these new trial towers, and people are talking about how difficult it is to complete them because there are no checkpoints in them. There's also a new boss that kind of follows around and can make life very, very difficult. That was me trying to do some more French. I can't do French. I already said that.
Can we get in the comments how much you don't want to hear him ever try to do that again? Thank you.
Yeah. But probably one of the biggest things was there are some people complaining that the game is requiring them, when they're going through the trials, to perfect parry more often. Kind of like how I was talking about in Liza P, how perfect parrying is becoming such a big thing. Well, yes, people have taken social media, and there have been some very, we'll say, colorful exchanges of people's opinions. But one of them basically said, like, wow, the developer really took offense to everybody saying his game was too easy, so he made it really, really hard. But the one I do want to read, a KZ Excellent tweeted, hit the last challenge before the final boss of Sonic Frontiers DLC, and yeah, it's probably the most difficult thing they've ever put into their games. Ever. Wow. DLC has been the most fun I've had playing a Sonic game, but it's not going to be for everyone. And I think that's kind of the big thing you need to take away from it. But it sounds great. I'm kind of excited for it, you know? Just the simple idea of I get to play more Sonic, and it's actually more challenging. I mean, the game was, I think, like the right difficulty level for what it should be. And it makes me like question people when they're like, yeah, this game was way too easy. But yet they try to get through level 1-2, and trying to get the S rating on that. And it's incredibly difficult to do. I managed to do it, but it took me forever. And the biggest thing was trying to you had to beat the level in record time. And it was just, I think I beat it by maybe 2 seconds. And that was like a miracle.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what this game, the DLC is going to have for me. I'm going to enjoy it. I hope you guys will enjoy it too. That's really me and my news today. I know you got one more story, so I want to leave you with Monster's final news story. Bomb, bomb, bomb. There. I'll add to your news theme song.
Oh, jeez. It's going to be the worst news theme song ever put together.
Yep. And I'm going to make sure.
All right. Well, there's a new head at GameStop. And this new billionaire calls for extreme frugality in his email to the staff. That means every store got
every employee
this letter. This letter. And he says,
okay,
I will be straight to the point. It is not sustainable for GameStop to operate a money-losing business. The mission is to operate hyper-efficiently and profitably. Our expense structure must allow us to endure any adverse scenario, whether it is a difficult economy or revenue deceleration from shrinking software. We must be profitable. Our job is to make sure GameStop is here for decades to come. Extreme frugality is required. Every expense at the company must be scrutinized under a microscope and all waste eliminated. The company has no use for delegators or money wasters. I expect everyone to treat company money like their own and lead by example. It goes on a bit more like this. I think this is the worst thing that any new person taking power could ever say to their staff.
Absolutely. The first 3 sentences tell me, as a non-involved individual, this dude has not worked a day in his life.
He's not worked retail. But the fact of the matter is that he is putting the onus on
the employees.
And I think there is something to employees taking control of their, what they can do in their store. But extreme frugality, what does that mean? Does that mean when I have 15 people in my store, I'm the only one manning it? I tell you what, if there's, I worked at a GameStop. So speaking as someone who worked at a GameStop here, and I had, at the beginning of the summer, you'd be surprised at how busy June was back in the day because people are going on vacation. I sold tons of Game Boy games. I was the only one in the store, and there's tons of people in with their children looking for games. And there's stuff out on the floor that you could just take and run. So, granted, most of, if you don't know, if you haven't worked retail before, most retail theft is inside. People who work for the company. That's the vast majority of your retail theft is in inside jobs, essentially. But if you're talking about having, they're thinly staffed as it is, and now they're going to get more thinly staffed, like external theft is going to go up. Well, there's no doubt about it in my mind.
Oh, yeah. No, honestly, this email, just from what you've read, sounds like this is the actual death knell for GameStop.
I think in a world where, as much as I hate to say it again, is moving away from physical games, they need to figure out what they're doing. I think they need to become a much more classic video gaming shop. I think they need to pivot a lot harder into board games, because I think board games, inherently, board games are not something, is easier to sell in a store. You can order them online, but at the end of the day, you're still getting a physical box of something.
Right.
So I think that has much longer legs, so to speak.
I think, my personal opinion, I think GameStop needs to pick a avenue or a venue and stick with it and run with it. So you want to be a video game store? Be a video game store. Stop selling Funko Pops and T-shirts and all this weird stuff, candy and whatever. Because I've gone to some GameStops, like the one near at our local mall, and I'm like, this is not a video game. This has nothing to do with video games. Why is it in here?
I disagree. I think they need to pivot a lot more into other things other than the video games, because unless you're doing classic stuff, because there's that market is drying up. And eventually, I hope the next generation of consoles has a physical media still, but I do see a world where, the next generation of video game consoles is the last one to have physical media.
I could see that, but I think if you look back at let's look at other retail stores that we've seen in the past that were mainly electronics and dealing with video games and things like that, like Fry's. I don't think they exist anymore.
No,
Fry's Electronics. They started off, we're going to sell computer parts, we're going to sell appliances, we're going to sell movies and video games. And they did a great job. And they were doing really well, and people really liked them. Then things started to go south, and so they started diversifying. There was a section at one point where they had groceries. It doesn't make sense to lose your focus.
What I'm saying is, these things that they're selling, like Funko Pops and other things, are still within the realm of video games or things that are tangential to video games. It's not
I was seeing stuff that had anything to do with. That's what I'm talking about. The stuff that doesn't have anything to do with video games. It shouldn't be in a GameStop. That's what my argument is. If you want to sell T-shirts that have video game stuff on it, that's cool because it's video game related. But they were selling stuff that was like, oh, this is from the popular anime everybody likes.
You can get Hero Quest.
Yeah, but you shouldn't.
Why?
Because it's not a video game. Unless there's a Hero Quest video game. Let there be a Hero Quest video game, please. That'd be fun. Thank you. Dear developers, please. I want a Hero Quest video game. Thank you. But the fact is...
And make the most powerful weapon the broadsword.
No, make it the door.
Gosh. Dude, that YouTube video is still the best.
Yeah. But it's just the idea of when companies start to diversify too far, when they start to stretch themselves too thin, that's when they start to fall apart. So I'm totally fine with you being like, yes, we're going to sell these video games. Yes, we're going to sell these shirts that have deal with video games. But like, you're not going to compete with, give me one, Too Cool. You're not going to compete with, it's a completely different market. Stop trying to step into other markets. Fix your own market first. That's my opinion.
All right. We'll leave it there.
Yeah. What are your opinions on any of these news stories? Let us know. Also, I'm telling you, if you tell me to talk about a news story, I'm going to talk about it. Tell us in the comments. We want to hear from you guys. But we actually went a lot longer than we thought we were going to today.
Yep.
Which is good, because we need to ramble and rant.
Sorry.
No, not sorry. Not sorry at all. This is what we need to do. So, thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to get out of here. You guys have a fantastic week. Enjoy your games. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care.
Later.